Hi, I'm Alexandra Bennett. I discovered my sister was having dinner with my fiancé, so I booked the table right beside theirs. My own flesh and blood stole my handcrafted silk dress, my dreams, even my future, all while claiming it was just a natural connection. They methodically erased my existence, silently pillaged my life for months, and smiled sweetly while I remained in the shadows, completely unaware. Will you watch in silence or witness as I reclaim every piece they've stolen? Before we continue, let us know what time you're listening to this and where you're tuning in from. Leave a comment below. I truly read every single one. It was one of those eerily quiet evenings when everything felt too peaceful to be real. Nathan was showering, humming contentedly as if our world was perfectly intact. I was curled up on our Austin condo's couch, my fingers sorting through fabric swatches and color palettes for an important client presentation. The kind of night that should have ended with herbal tea and peaceful slumber. But then his phone illuminated with a notification. Just a simple ping. A familiar sound I'd heard countless times before. I never intended to look. I honestly didn't. But the screen faced directly toward me, and something deeper than curiosity compelled my eyes to glance down. Meridian Friday private booth. She'll adore it. I blinked hard, trying to process what I was seeing. The message preview came from my sister Sophia. My stomach tightened into a painful knot. I told myself it had to be a mistake, but the sender's name was unmistakable, and the casual tone felt disturbingly intimate. A private booth at Meridian? That wasn't somewhere you'd go with colleagues or for casual meals. That was where Nathan had taken me for our first anniversary. I sat completely frozen, feeling my heartbeat in my fingertips. Then, as if possessed, my hand reached for his phone. I hesitated briefly. I'd never been someone who invaded privacy, but something about that message triggered a primal instinct beyond rational thought. The passcode remained our anniversary date. I let out a bitter laugh that caught in my throat. The screen unlocked, revealing a completely different reality from the one I'd been living in. Their message thread wasn't just casual conversation. It documented a carefully orchestrated betrayal unfolding over months. Dinner reservations, private jokes, references to events that happened during times when I believed Nathan was working late or attending out-of-town conferences. And then came the photo of Sophia wearing my dress, my handmade silk dress, the one I'd meticulously designed for our engagement photo shoot, the one I'd reluctantly lent her last month because she claimed to have a charity function with absolutely nothing appropriate to wear. The same dress she'd previously dismissed with a smirk, saying, "It's cute." A bit conservative for my taste, though. There she stood, posing in my creation, one shoulder slightly exposed, hand resting confidently on her hip, as if she owned not just the dress, but everything it represented. I stared at the image, feeling my chest constrict painfully. This wasn't merely infidelity I was witnessing. I was looking at my systematic erasure. My sister had taken something deeply personal and claimed it as her own, my fiancé. My dress, my rightful place. I didn't shed tears. I didn't hurl his phone across the room. I didn't scream despite the burning in my throat. Instead, I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it. Then I walked deliberately, each step measured, to our kitchen. I poured myself water with hands that should have been trembling violently but remained strangely steady. It's peculiar how betrayal doesn't strike like lightning. It seeps into your body like ice water, numbing you from the inside out. After taking a small sip, I grabbed my own phone and texted Marcus. "Are you awake?" His response came within seconds. "For you always." Marcus, my best friend, my former boyfriend, the only person who had witnessed all of Sophia's previous betrayals and called them exactly what they were. "I need to make a dinner reservation," I said immediately upon his answering. I kept my voice deliberately calm, almost clinical. "Meridian." "Friday night." A moment of silence followed. "Adjacent to their table?" "Exactly." The maitre d' was remarkably accommodating. I didn't resort to begging or fabricating stories. I simply explained I desired a private dinner, preferably near another specific party for professional reasons. He assured me complete discretion. Once arrangements were finalized, I stood motionless in the center of our kitchen. The soft humming of the refrigerator, the faint sound of running water from upstairs, these ordinary sounds made my head feel strangely empty, as if this couldn't possibly be happening, yet it was. I switched off the kitchen light and walked back toward the hallway. Nathan remained in the shower. Instead of retreating to bed, I slipped into my home office. settling at the antique wooden desk I'd inherited from my grandfather. I opened my vintage leather journal, untouched since January, and on a pristine page, I wrote a single sentence in thick black ink, underlining it 3 times. Let's see what it feels like to sit beside betrayal and not flinch. I closed the journal, and this time my hands trembled visibly. Let's see what it feels like to sit beside betrayal and not flinch. That sentence had occupied my thoughts constantly for 3 days. I repeated it while brushing my teeth each morning, whispered it during my commute, and rewrote it repeatedly in my journal like a mantra I didn't yet believe but desperately needed to embody. Friday arrived with alarming speed. By 6:30 I was already seated at Meridian. I'd never seen the restaurant so dimly lit, so unusually hushed, as if the space itself sensed the tension about to unfold. The maitre d' greeted me with the knowing look reserved for valued patrons, who tip generously and bring unavoidable drama. He nodded discreetly and directed me toward a corner. As requested, Miss Bennet, table 12, your guest has already arrived. Guest? I turned to find Marcus already seated, wearing a navy blazer with a crisp white shirt, no tie, perfectly composed as always. You didn't think I'd let you face this situation alone, did you? He said, rising with a gentle smile. He extended his hand, which I gratefully accepted. His grip felt reassuringly warm and firm, lingering just long enough that anyone watching might assume we were more than friends, which soon they would be. He pulled out my chair as if this were our first date. I sat silently, smoothing the emerald fabric of my structured dress. Nothing flashy, just elegantly powerful. The type of sophisticated piece Sophia would never consider wearing. My wine was waiting crisp, dry white. I sipped it slowly, allowing its cool sharpness to steady my nerves. Marcus leaned closer. Are you absolutely certain you want to be here for this? I've been certain since the moment I saw her wearing my dress, I replied, my voice surprisingly firm. At precisely 7:12, Nathan entered. He surveyed the room casually, as if searching for someone familiar while trying to appear nonchalant. His hair was styled exactly the way I used to run my fingers through it. I noticed that same slight hunch in his shoulders that always appeared when he felt nervous. I observed every detail from just 10 feet away. Then Sophia made her entrance, commanding attention as always. Hair elegantly swept up, confident stride, smiling as if she'd never caused anyone pain in her entire life. She was wearing my nude designer heels, the expensive ones I'd lent her for a client dinner 6 months earlier, which mysteriously never found their way back to my closet, just like countless other possessions she'd borrowed then silently claimed as her own. She laughed at something Nathan said. They slid into their booth, sitting conspicuously close, intimate like a couple who had rehearsed this moment repeatedly. God, Marcus muttered under his breath. They look completely rehearsed. I remained silent. I was too focused on memorizing every nuance of their body language, her body angled toward him, his hand hovering possessively near her thigh. I swirled my wine thoughtfully, then stood. Marcus made no move to stop me. I took the longer route past their booth, pretending to head toward the restroom. Upon my return, I made deliberate eye contact. Sophia noticed me first. She froze completely. Her smile disintegrated in real time. Nathan turned next. His jaw literally dropped. I paused beside their booth, outwardly calm while my heart raced. My voice remained impressively steady. Sophia, I said smoothly, I believe you remember Marcus. Marcus stood behind me like a protective sentinel, nodding politely without offering a smile. He didn't need to perform. Sophia's mouth opened, then closed without producing sound. Nathan appeared desperate to disappear into the floor. And you? I turned toward him. I believe you forgot that I notice everything. Nathan blinked rapidly. Alexandra, what is this? You tell me, I replied, tilting my head slightly. I'm simply enjoying dinner, just like you. They remained motionless, speechless. Sophia looked down first, as if the tiled floor might offer some escape. I turned toward the maître d', who had been observing from a respectful distance. Would it be possible to join these tables? I asked, my voice flowing like honey. It's time we had a proper conversation. The maître d' gave a subtle nod and merged our tables without asking questions. There was only the soft clink of silverware and gentle rustle of linens as our spaces connected. Marcus slid in beside me again. Nathan sat rigidly across from us, Sophia beside him, arms tightly crossed in her lap. For what felt like eternity, no one spoke. The silence wasn't merely uncomfortable, it was suffocating. Nathan attempted to break it first. Predictably. It's not what you're thinking, he began, voice noticeably unsteady. I was planning to talk with you, Alexandra. I swear we never intended for... Don't, I interrupted quietly. Please don't rewrite history for my benefit. Sophia released a slow breath, crossing one leg over the other. This isn't about betrayal, she stated. This is about a connection we couldn't ignore. It simply happened naturally. A connection? I tilted my head slightly. Is that what you call forwarding him the reservation information I created for our anniversary? Nathan shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's jaw visibly tightened. Marcus remained silent, but I felt the reassuring pressure of his thumb gently brushing my knuckles beneath the table, grounding me in reality. You didn't fall in love, I said, looking directly into both their eyes. You methodically practiced this deception during my absence. Sophia scoffed audibly. Come on, Alexandra. He was never truly yours. You two were playing house, sure, but you were always halfway disengaged. I could have taken her bait, but chose not to. Instead, I leaned back, appearing as relaxed as if we were having Sunday brunch. And you've always confused theft with genuine achievement. Fascinating how that pattern continuously repeats itself. Her smile fractured. You've always made everything so dramatic, even when we were teenagers. Remember that design competition? You acted like losing that showcase spot was some terrible injustice. My breath caught painfully in my chest. I remembered with perfect clarity. I remembered because I hadn't lost. I had won first place regionally. My design had been displayed on our family mantle for exactly 1 week. Then Dad replaced it with Sophia's homecoming queen photograph. He explained it was more representative of the family values. I was 16, and that week I wrote in my journal, I guess I'm just background noise. She's the headline story. Sophia never knew I'd witnessed that substitution. Or that I'd cried silently in the garage for 2 hours, with music playing loudly so no one would hear my sobs. I didn't respond to her bait now. I simply pushed back my chair and addressed the maitre d'. We're finished here. Thank you. He nodded respectfully. Marcus stood. The table remained silent. The drive back to my condominium was completely silent. The kind of quiet that vibrates like static electricity in your bones. Marcus walked me to my door, then departed with nothing more than a meaningful look and a soft, text me if you need anything. I stood inside, shoes removed but still wearing my dinner outfit. Sleep was impossible. So I sat on my couch, phone in hand, and began scrolling through social media. Sophia had posted new photos from a vineyard. Nathan's hand possessively on her lower back. Sophia wearing a dress nearly identical to the one I had designed for my own photo shoot. The captions, even the quote beneath the main photo, my quote, the exact words I'd emailed Nathan last month while planning our engagement session. Love doesn't need to be loud to be forever. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding violently as if I'd sprinted a mile. My breathing became shallow and cold sweat formed along my spine. They hadn't just taken him from me. They had stolen my entire narrative. My life blueprint, photos, words, aesthetic sensibility, all claimed as their own creation. My phone vibrated. Marcus. Still awake? I typed back instantly. They didn't just take him from me. They stole my entire creative identity. I set down my phone, walked to my bookshelf, and retrieved my old journal, leather-bound and barely intact. The one I hadn't opened in over a decade. I flipped through pages filled with birthday sketches, teenage crush doodles, family holiday memories I'd pretended to enjoy. Then I found it written 15 years ago. The page had yellowed, but the ink remained vivid. If I ever disappear from my own life, I hope someone notices. I gently traced my fingers across those words. I whispered aloud, I notice now. I notice now. And once you begin to notice, you can never return to pretending. The following morning, I didn't open my laptop, check emails, or even water my plants as usual. I just sat motionless, my coffee growing cold, staring blankly until my phone screen illuminated with a name I hadn't seen in months. Justine Parker. We'd met in law school, drifted apart as our careers pulled us in different directions. I knew she and Sophia had recently become close again. Weekly book clubs, Pilates classes, wine tastings. I hadn't given it much thought until now. Justine's text, hey, I know this is awkward. Can we talk? Just the two of us. She suggested a cafe on East 6th. Quiet, locally owned, the kind of place that served espresso in proper ceramic cups and played acoustic versions of 90s songs. When I arrived, she was already seated, both hands wrapped anxiously around her mug, as if it might somehow help her speak more easily. Thanks for coming, she said, genuine concern in her eyes. I nodded, sliding into the seat across from her. What's happening, Justine? She hesitated before retrieving her phone. I thought you already knew. I didn't want to get involved, but you don't deserve any of this. She opened a thread of text messages. Sophia's name appeared prominently at the top. Her messages were deliberately cruel. Sophia, she clings to him like a desperate puppy. Nathan can barely breathe. Sophia, you should see how alive he becomes when he's with me. It's like she kept him trapped in a beautiful cage. Justine's eyes reflected guilt as she handed me her phone. They've been seeing each other for nearly a year. I didn't flinch or ask for additional details. I simply returned her phone. My jaw tightened and said, "Thank you for your honesty." That's more than I've received from most people lately. Later that afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, partly to prove to myself I could stand there without breaking down. The house still smelled of sweet-baked goods and nostalgia. Almost too pristine, somewhat hollow. My mother opened the door, clearly surprised by my unannounced visit. "Alexandra, is everything all right?" "I just wanted to talk," I said, maintaining an even tone. "About Nathan." Her brow furrowed with concern as she led me to the kitchen. Tea was already brewing. "I know this isn't easy," she said after an uncomfortable pause. "But Nathan, well, he always seemed to have a special bond with Sophia. Perhaps it's not betrayal. Perhaps they simply have an undeniable connection." I blinked slowly. "Connection," I repeated, testing the word. "So that's our standard now." Before she could respond, footsteps descended the stairs. Sophia appeared, casually wearing one of my old university sweatshirts, a design book in hand. "Oh," she said with practiced nonchalance, "didn't realize you were visiting." I stared at the book cover, the rare design reference book my father had given me before his illness. A treasured gift I'd kept carefully stored for years. She had dog-eared several pages. "You're living here?" I asked, feeling my chest tighten. "Just until the wedding," she replied without hesitation. Mom thought it made sense. I glanced back at our mother, who offered no contradiction. I stood slowly. "I'll let you both return to your bonding," I said evenly. But at the entryway, I turned back. Sophia was following close behind, likely hoping to witness my distress. I stopped, facing her directly. "You may have convinced them," I said quietly. "You may even believe what you're doing is love, but you're building on a foundation of ashes." Her lip curled with disdain. "You're simply bitter. Let it go. You never truly inspired him. There it was the deliberate wound." Still, I maintained my composure. "Enjoy him," I said, my voice cold as winter. "But if you attempt to erase me again, I'll ensure everyone sees who destroyed what we built." She rolled her eyes dramatically and slammed the door behind me. And there on the hallway table, the final insult, a framed photograph I'd taken years ago during our family trip to Sedona. My composition, my editing, my creative vision. My watermark had been deliberately cropped out. Beneath it, a gold plaque read, "Captured by Sophia." I took out my phone and photographed it as evidence. I barely remember walking to my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in the driver's seat, engine running, keys still in my lap. The framed photograph was burned into my memory. My creation, my editing, my artistic vision, now repurposed like everything else they had systematically taken. 3 days passed in a blur. I attempted to work, but accomplished little. I went through necessary motions, keeping my responses brief and my voice steady. But internally something was shifting, transforming, settling into place. Then came the message. "Mom, could you come by Saturday, just for a calm discussion?" The word calm immediately revealed her agenda. Something was planned. Saturday afternoon, I drove up the familiar driveway, listening to the gravel crunch beneath my tires. A dull ache spread through my chest. How many holidays, birthdays, and tearful nights had this house witnessed? Now, I wasn't certain it held anything meaningful for me. Inside, they were already arranged like a staged intervention. Mom perched on the sofa edge like a mediator. Dad across from her, hands formally folded. Nathan sat stiffly near the armrest while Sophia maintained perfect posture, legs elegantly crossed, smiling as if she belonged there more naturally than I ever had. "Thank you for coming," Mom said formally, as if this were a business negotiation. I took the only empty seat and waited silently. "We simply want to move forward peacefully," she continued. "There's no benefit in prolonging this tension. The engagement party is just 2 weeks away. Could we agree to avoid creating any uncomfortable scenes?" My jaw tightened instinctively. "By scenes, do you mean speaking the truth?" Dad, who rarely spoke unless discussing weather patterns or car maintenance, looked up. "There's no purpose in revisiting what's already done." Nathan cleared his throat but remained silent. Then Sophia, radiating her usual confidence, added, "We just want to celebrate properly. Start fresh." The venue deposit is secured. The honeymoon accommodations are confirmed. Everything's perfectly arranged. Her voice flowed effortlessly, as if the universe had simply rearranged itself to suit her desires. Suddenly, something clicked in my mind. The deposit, the honeymoon. 2 years earlier, she had called me sobbing. "It's an emergency, Alex. I need surgery and can't tell Mom. I promise I'll repay you. I swear." I had transferred $25,000 immediately. No documentation, just sisterly trust. I never saw medical bills, never witnessed recovery scars, just a new apartment and an expanding Pinterest board labeled "Forever with him." Now I understood with painful clarity that money never funded any medical procedure. It purchased her vineyard venue, honeymoon suite, and my continued silence. I said nothing. I didn't need to. My entire body went cold as realization dawned. Sophia reached into her designer bag and withdrew a thick envelope, white with gold embossing. "Here," she said sweetly, "your invitation. I still want you present." I accepted it, staring at the gold lettering, our family name printed prominently as if nothing were amiss. Then I returned it to her. "I won't attend a celebration built on theft." Mom gasped audibly. "Don't do this, Alexandra. She's your sister." I looked directly at her, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time. "And I was your daughter first." I stood and walked out before anyone could intervene. No shouting, no final declarations, just the weight of countless unspoken truths pressing between my shoulder blades. Outside, the sky had darkened with approaching clouds. I reached my car, leaned against the door, and filled my lungs with fresh air. Then I unlocked my phone and typed the message I'd been contemplating for days. "To Marcus, it's time. Can we meet Monday? Legal matters." By the time Marcus opened his office door Monday morning, I was already seated in the lobby, clutching a folder I hadn't dared examine for days. He didn't offer typical greetings or comment on my exhausted appearance. He simply nodded, stepped aside, and said, "Come in." The office smelled faintly of leather and fresh coffee, strangely comforting. It reminded me of our law school days studying for exams together, before titles and betrayals complicated everything. I placed the folder on his desk and said quietly, "I need you to examine this. I believe they used my identity." He didn't flinch. He simply opened the folder and began reading methodically. Inside were screenshots of my wire transfer to Sophia. $25,000 labeled simply as personal emergency, and copies of Nathan's business proposal he'd once asked me to review. At the time, he claimed he was merely brainstorming ideas. Now I realized it had been a calculated blueprint. Marcus remained silent for several minutes. He opened a narrow locked drawer and retrieved a printed set of business documents. "This is Sophia's sustainable fashion startup, correct?" I nodded. "Look at line 14, he said, sliding the form toward me. "Initial angel investor registered as AB through cash investment firm." That's you. Your transfer. They disguised it through his business entity. My breath caught painfully in my throat. Looking closer, I saw it clearly. A signature I'd used once years earlier on a lease agreement. They had copied and repurposed it. They used my money to launch her business, then erased me once I served my purpose, I whispered, feeling my hands tremble. Marcus leaned back thoughtfully. "You have grounds to sue. You would win, but filing now would let them paint you as bitter and jealous. You'd appear like a rejected ex with financial motives. If we time this strategically, we can catch them completely unprepared." His assessment was accurate. We spent the next hour crafting a careful strategy. No immediate lawsuit, just strategic pressure points. We prepared documents to flag any future investments tied to that business name. Then he helped me file a formal notice of investment contribution, just enough to appear in public records without generating major attention. Yet, by mid-afternoon, I left with a folder tucked under one arm and newfound clarity under the other. That evening, just before sunset, I visited Sophia's boutique called Essence. The windows gleamed impressively. So did her name, etched in elegant gold script on the glass as if it had always belonged there. I entered holding a scarf she'd borrowed during college and never returned. Her assistant looked up, eyes widening with recognition. "Oh, hello. Did you see the email notification? Our payment system is frozen. Our merchant accounts are on hold. Some legal flag connected to an investor's name. Yours, actually." Before I could respond, Sophia emerged from the back office. Her smile vanished the instant she saw me. She looked as if she'd encountered something she didn't know could fight back. I handed her the scarf. "Thought you might want this returned." She opened her mouth but found no words. I stepped closer, just near enough that only she could hear me. Interesting thing about erasing people. Sometimes their names reappear in bold, unmistakable print. Then I departed. No confrontation, no drama, just the dignified silence of a woman who finally recognized her true worth. At home, I removed my shoes, poured a glass of water, and opened my laptop. That's when the anonymous message appeared. No identifying information, no profile picture. Just a plain direct message, just warning you. They're planning to go public first. They'll try to discredit you before you pursue legal action. The message remained open on my screen for a full minute before I moved. No name, no identifying information, just words that struck like a match to dry kindling. They're planning to go public first. Discredit you before you pursue legal action. I didn't respond. I barely breathed for several seconds. I simply closed my laptop, stood up, and walked purposefully to my closet. The dress I selected wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. It was strategic. Deep emerald, structured shoulders, clean, elegant neckline. I wore my hair up, makeup subtle but polished. There would be no distractions tonight, only truth. Friday evening traffic in Austin hummed outside my window. The city continuing as normal, unaware of the confrontation brewing in one of its upscale hotel ballrooms. I arrived early, uninvited but confident. No one questioned my presence at the entrance. It's remarkable how people assume you belong when you carry yourself with certainty. Inside, the air was heavy with expensive perfume, ambition, and carefully cultivated smiles. The type of sustainable fashion charity gala where people speak of authenticity while meaning marketability. I accepted sparkling water from a passing tray and allowed my eyes to adjust to the lighting. Then I saw her, Sophia, standing on stage beneath warm spotlights, her voice clear and rehearsed. And so I built this brand from nothing. No shortcuts, just vision, dedication, and surrounding myself with people who believed in my sustainable approach. Applause followed. A dramatic pause. She placed her hand over her heart as a slideshow displayed behind her. Childhood photographs, images from her boutique, culminating with the words, Bennett's self-made, ethical fashion pioneer, a story of authentic vision. I moved through the crowd like drifting smoke. Beyond the polite conversation, I caught disturbing fragments. Nathan mentioned his ex couldn't handle the breakup. Apparently she's causing legal problems for them now. Such a shame, really. Some people simply cannot move forward. And there he was, Nathan, standing just off stage, leaning toward a PR representative with an expression of practiced concern perfectly calculated for sympathy. She's emotionally fragile, I heard him say, voice deliberately lowered. We didn't want to make this public, but she's fabricating stories. We've only ever wished her healing and peace. I could have screamed with rage. I could have seized the microphone and exposed their lies completely, but I didn't. Instead, I walked calmly toward the front as the MC concluded the presentation. And now, before we conclude, a special acknowledgement to past contributors who've helped advance ethical fashion. Beginning with Alexandra Bennett, I stepped forward. A few polite, confused applauses followed. I took the microphone, smiled slightly, and held up my phone. I believe creative integrity matters, I said clearly, especially in stories where someone gets deliberately erased and must write themselves back in. I tapped the screen. Nathan's voice echoed throughout the ballroom speakers. We didn't want to say anything before, but she's unstable. We've maintained silence out of compassion. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Chairs shifted audibly. Drinks hovered mid-air. Then I tapped again. Founding investment document of Essence Sustainable Fashion, I announced. Filed January 3rd, 2022. Initial investor Alexandra Bennett. I held up the notarized printout for everyone to see. And the original design portfolio, I continued. All created from a vision they now claim solely as their own. Sophia had frozen halfway down the steps toward the microphone. I turned to face her directly. I'm not here to publicly humiliate you, I said evenly. I'm here to correct the historical record. Then I handed the microphone back to the stunned MC, descended from the stage and walked out with dignity. Behind me, the room erupted with noise. Gasps, whispers, camera flashes, but I never looked back. I closed my door behind me, not slamming it, not even pushing it firmly shut, simply allowing the silence to consume their departure. For a moment I stood there, one hand still resting on the doorknob. My condominium had never felt so clean, so completely free of pretense. I exhaled deeply and turned toward my phone. The video clip from the gala had spread rapidly. By morning, it appeared everywhere. Someone had captured the entire confrontation. My composed statement, the contract evidence, Sophia's shocked expression, even the moment I walked away with nothing but my reclaimed identity. Social media exploded with hashtags like "No authentic creator," "Ah, truth prevails," and my personal favorite, "Turns out the quiet designer built the house they tried to evict her from." Even my email inbox overflowed. Journalists, former colleagues, distant relatives reaching out. A complete stranger had written, "I never trusted Sophia's brand story. Thank you for showing everyone that quiet integrity outshines loud deception." Then came Marcus's call. The audit was triggered. Payment processors have flagged Sophia's business and the investment fund. They're suspending operations until ownership is properly clarified. I sat down slowly on my couch edge. Not from shock, but from profound relief. Not victory yet, just breathing space. Then came the message I never anticipated. A forwarded voice recording. No name, just a subject line. "You should hear this." I pressed play. Nathan's voice, unmistakable and casual. "She won't fight back. Alexandra doesn't have that capacity. We'll just transition everything gradually. By the time she realizes what's happening, it will already be ours." A pause followed, then Sophia's distinctive laugh. She always wanted everything to be fair and ethical. That's her fundamental weakness. The recording ended. My hands trembled, not from pain, but from absolute clarity. The forwarding address, Essence Boutique. I checked the metadata. The file was listed under her assistant's folder. 3 hours later, a simple email arrived. "She forced us to erase you from everything." "I'm sorry I participated." I couldn't continue. "Rebecca," I didn't respond. I simply gazed out my window, watching shadows shift across neighboring buildings. Some betrayals cut deeply, while others ultimately free you. That evening, they arrived unannounced. Nathan knocked first. Sophia stood behind him. No makeup, no practiced confidence in her expression. Only panic. I didn't invite them inside. I simply allowed them to speak. "Alexandra, we can resolve this. If you withdraw the legal claim, we'll publicly make things right. Just tell everyone it was a misunderstanding." He looked at me the way people regard ATM machines, expecting a simple transaction. Sophia's voice cracked with emotion. "I never meant to destroy you. I didn't realize it would escalate this far." I nodded slowly. "You didn't destroy me." I paused, allowing the weight of silence to settle between us. "You liberated me." They had no response to that truth. Sophia turned as they prepared to leave. "I don't even recognize who you've become." I smiled genuinely for the first time. "Perhaps that's precisely the problem. You never truly saw me to begin with." Sophia's final words had barely faded when I closed the door. The air in my condominium held the weight of everything left unspoken. But for once, I didn't need lightness. I needed honest clarity. A month had passed since the charity gala. A month since the crowd fell silent, and the version of me they tried to erase reclaimed the microphone instead. During that time, silence changed ownership. Sophia's brand lost 3 ethical fashion sponsorships within the first week. Nathan quietly resigned from the investment firm he'd helped establish. Their coordinated attempt to discredit me unraveled with the leak of that damning recording, his voice confessing they had planned everything methodically. Not a misunderstanding, but a calculated transition. Rebecca, the assistant who sent me the evidence, never sought recognition. She simply wrote, "She made us erase your contributions." I couldn't continue participating. That was enough. Apology messages arrived from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some expressed shock and disbelief. Others claimed they never fully believed their carefully crafted narrative. I didn't respond to any of them. Closure, I've discovered, is something you stop pursuing once genuine healing begins. My mother never called. That painful reality wasn't because I expected an apology, but because some part of me still hoped she might attempt to understand my perspective. She didn't, and perhaps never would. But I didn't create this chapter of my life for her benefit. One peaceful Friday evening, I received an invitation to a community design showcase at downtown's new cultural center. Nothing extravagant, just genuine warmth. Local artists, delicate string lights illuminating a polished patio. I wasn't entirely certain why I attended until I arrived. Near the refreshment table, nestled between modest floral arrangements and a display of mentorship program brochures, I noticed it. A handcrafted geometric candle holder. The same pattern from the restaurant where Nathan first took me to dinner. The same design Sophia had once dismissed as too precious and impractical. But tonight it wasn't presented as a joke. It was offered as acknowledgement, a signature of authenticity. Marcus stood nearby, arms comfortably crossed, quietly observing as always. When our eyes met, he smiled slightly. "I told them it was your distinctive design aesthetic," he said, taking a sip of amber-colored whiskey. They had announced a mentorship program that evening named after my father, specifically for designers who create behind the scenes. I hadn't known until the host read it aloud. For a breathtaking moment, I forgot to inhale. Later, as the crowd thinned and darkness settled over the Colorado River, Marcus and I walked along the water's edge. He asked gently, "Do you feel better now?" I shook my head. "Not better, just more clearly defined." It wasn't revenge motivating me anymore. It was something quieter yet sharper, a clean distinction between who I once was and who I refused to become again. "They tried to write me out of my own story," I told him, "but I didn't vanish. I simply picked up the pen myself. We didn't speak much after that. We didn't need additional words." Back home that night, I framed a photograph from the showcase, one a friend had captured while I was addressing the audience. Mid-sentence, back straight, eyes reflecting absolute certainty. It wasn't about appearing powerful. It was about finally resembling my authentic self again. In my journal, I wrote, "This wasn't the ending they scripted for me, but it's the one I chose for myself, and that distinction makes all the difference. Sometimes the people who work hardest to silence you are those who most fear your authentic voice. And sometimes justice isn't loud or dramatic. It's simply walking away with your creative identity completely intact."